Okay, so I'd like to show in brief how field calculator can be used to calculate values in a new field, either values on their own or in, let's say, using other fields as a base. So keep in mind that I'm starting here with a new field added. If you want to know how to do that, just really quickly, you would add a field here. You want to select the right data type, keeping in mind the limitations of integers, floating points, and text strings, among others. There are actually a wide variety of data types available to new fields depending on what format the data is stored in. This is a DBF file, a DBase file, so there are only some pretty standard ones. So what we want to do is find the column in which we're looking to mess around with some data. In this case, it's one I added called temp. And I just right-click the column header and head down to Field Calculator. If you're not in an editing session, you'll get an error message about speed and also whether you can undo your results. In this case, I'm going to say I do wish to continue, but you might want to think about it if you're not sure what you're doing. Start an editing session will allow you to undo any changes you have. And then what we have here is essentially a little calculator box. It can get very complicated with the use of Python or Visual Basic scripting, but for our example, we're just going to mess with some values here. So notice here it says temp equals, and temp is the name of our column. So we could make, say, temp equal to 1, and it's going to replace all the values in here with the value 1, right? We can also do something interesting, like select a couple rows here, and maybe we know that these 3 rows should have a value of 100. We can select just those rows we want to change, click the field calculator and go ahead in here and actually set just those rows to be equal to 100. So anything that's selected here will be rows that the field calculator tool applies to. If none are selected, it will apply to all of the rows. We can also do something like complicated values between different attributes. So these are the other attributes or fields, and maybe we want to come up with a ratio, make temp equal to the ratio between potassium and iron. Not that this would make any sense, but the output of this would be the proportion of potassium to iron, essentially, a ratio between the two. And it ranges from 47% to whatever, and that would be a more complicated output or formula put in here. And you can do pretty complicated things as well, including turning the floating point values here into integer percentages. In this case, I'm taking the output, multiplying it by 100, and then turning the output of that into an integer, which is what this int command does here. And what we'll be left with would be 47%, 57%, etc. Field calculator can also be run as a tool in your toolbox here. It's actually called calculate field, and it's in the data management toolbox, but it works pretty much the same way here, where you give it an input table, you give it a field name that you want to calculate values for, and you give it an expression. Looks pretty similar, huh? We could change this all to 100, hit OK, and it will run and actually change our values. I actually never tried running it, and it says that it failed. And you can look at some error messages in the results tab, and it shows parameters are not valid. I think probably because this is open. But field calculator works pretty, and calculate field works pretty reliably, and that's the basic gist of how they work.